Hi, I'm Jeremiah. Welcome to Up at Night. This podcast is all about learning from thought leaders, academics, and professionals based on one fundamental question. What keeps you up at night? Welcome to Up at Night. Today I am thrilled to be joined by Patrick Lauzon. Patrick is not only my former boss, but also someone I have tremendous respect. He's a certified EOS implementer, one of the rare top 40 under 40. He's highly involved with YPO and focused right now on helping entrepreneurs and business achieve their objectives. He sits on many boards. So, Patrick, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me this morning.
Pleasure, Jeremiah. How you doing?
So, Patrick, let's dig right into it. I want to know, you've done so many things, but where did it all started for you?
It's a good question, and it aligns on a lot of things that I do. So, my dad was when I was young. My dad was an executive in a large enterprise, and I thought, or I convinced myself that I needed to become an executive in a large business to succeed. But naturally, my natural habits were I was an entrepreneur. So, early age, I had some small businesses. I had a DJ business where we did all the Sweet 16 parties when I was in high school. I'd sell stuff in garage sales and all. So I'd always be looking for the next thing. I in university, I'd organize trips and parties because I didn't have money to go on vacation. So that was my way to get there. So intuitively, I was a natural entrepreneur, but I guess I was an insecure entrepreneur because I went through the path of becoming an executive, I guess, to maybe satisfy my dad. But that's kind of the path that I defined as success.
And that's very interesting because obviously we're influenced by the people who surrounds us. You've started your career quite young in the entrepreneurship world. At that time, what was your definition of success, and were you able to attain it, and at what cost, I would say?
Well, I guess achieving my objectives. So, becoming an executive in large enterprise, I achieved it. But I also, in parallel, continued co-investing or investing in businesses. So my weeks were quite busy. I would be working as an executive in large businesses, but I started multiple businesses, restaurants, bars, when I was young, and kind of had a secret parallel track where I had a business on the side while I was working as an executive, and I didn't neglect one versus the other, but it was quite exhausting, and I had the energy when I was younger to be able to do it.
When people say it was exhausting, I would like to put a bit more emphasis on that because people say business is like a roller coaster. The highs are really high, but the lows are also really low. And how did you manage through that? And how did you continue to build that resilience within your first businesses? Or in your case, what I find amazing that I personally still have to work a lot on, when it's time to move on and do something, you always seems to find the perfect timing. Can you please tell us a bit about that?
Well, like like I mentioned, when I had multiple facets. So I needed to surround myself with people I trusted, people I could work well with, and I guess the key to my success or my tenure in both as an executive and as an entrepreneur was to surround myself with key people and really focus on what Dan Sullivan would say, my unique ability. So I focused on my strengths and really surrounded myself to complement my weaknesses with other people that would help me. And I needed to do that with the fact that I was doing so many things. I was, and I, that's the way I approached it. There's multiple ways to have success. Some people are really focused and really focused on one thing. So there's different ways to achieve success. Mine was really to go broad, do a lot of things, but do them with, you know, the right people that would complement me.
I think that is one thing that's by far I've realized throughout the year. One of the most important thing, we're usually not well versed or excellent at doing everything. So having the right people is definitely a must.
And that's also kind of drawing up my, and at this stage of my career, I never planned it or imagined it. It's kind of been the accumulation of my career, basically. But the fact that I guess my what I consider my unique capability or my unique ability has been to really take the time to get to know a lot of people, listen to them, and understand what their challenges are or what their competences are. And really, what I do today is really what I consider I do today. I do it in different forms, but is really match the right people with the right capabilities with the right companies that need them. So at this point in my career, I started a company called Gray Substance, and Gray Substance for me is the experience. So the Gray Substance is also Gray Matters, but the experience, the knowledge, and bringing that experience and knowledge to people who have determination and the energy to deliver. So by matching the two, I find that the people that want and have ambition could accelerate their path or their success with people who have the right experience that they're lacking.
Mm.
So the competency gap that they're lacking.
Yeah, and it's true to have coaching or peers or people who have experience in what you're trying to achieve. Um, it's just so helpful. So talking about that, what would be for, let's say, a young entrepreneur right now thinking about starting his business, core competencies they should work on, or traps a lot of entrepreneurs are doing? What would you be your biggest advice to them or system that could help them kickstart that process?
Yeah. So um, basically, a young entrepreneur launching their business, I think really getting clarity on what they're trying to achieve. Like what is the long term. So I help a lot of businesses these days, and one of the things I do is help them with their strategic planning, but operationalizing their strategic plan as well. And that's a key element where I realized even when I was younger, I'd spend a lot of time developing a huge strategic plan, presenting it to the board, getting it approved, and not to that extent, but it would almost sit on the filing cabinet or in the filing cabinet, and it wouldn't get really operationalized, and we wouldn't break it down and follow through. And I use a methodology called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, and with EOS, we build a strategic plan, but we build the 20% that generates 80% of the activity. And then once we have that strategic plan developed, we operationalize it. And that's one of the key elements and the strengths of EOS, where we break it down for the company, for the individuals, and break it down into quarterly objectives, which are called rocks. And those and now and those rocks are delivered within 13 weeks or 90 days. And now we're kind of breaking down that long-term view, a 10-year view broken down into a 3-year vision and 1-year objectives. And now we have quarterly objectives that are followed up on a weekly basis. And the idea is to eliminate challenges or issues so that, we clear the way to make sure that we deliver on a quarterly basis. That gives us a better chance to meet our annual objective. And that gives us a much bigger chance to achieve our 10-year goal. So, so getting clarity on what you're trying to do and aligning your teams against that long-term objective is key, or else the company loses a lot of focus, and it becomes frustrating for the entrepreneur, but also for the people working around it.
Yeah, blurred line and a lack of clarity often can destabilize an organization, especially for high performer. How often, when you go as an advisor or when you get on a board, do you see this lacking nowadays?
Uh, Very often. Actually, I'm surprised. A lot of companies have either a challenge of getting clarity on where they're going and getting the teams aligned. So that's one key uh, um, common team that I'm seeing. The other team that I see is basically people might have a clarity on their long-term objective, but really the operationalizing of that a framework or a way to get there is the other common theme. So those would be the two that I see most often.
Um, I would like to ask you a question because you probably saw it, and you're probably one of the rare person who've been exposed to it. But there's a theory out there that, and I would like to run it by you. Certain entrepreneurs are cut for different things. Um, what I mean by that is, it's said that, let's say, someone who's a founder often will hit a ceiling that is going to have a very hard time to pass after a million, 10 million, and that it's often the best at this point to plan an exit and give the baby to someone else who's going to have the capacity to bring it to 100 million or $1 billion. Is this something that you've seen being true or not necessarily?
Yeah, so funny you talk about hitting ceilings because in my workshop, the first day, we talk about companies hitting ceilings, teams hitting ceilings, and individuals hitting ceilings. And hitting a ceiling means that you need to change your way of doing things. You might need to, and there's a whole bunch of things that you need to look at to be able to, overcome hitting that ceiling. Most companies don't get to 5 years of existence, and the 4% that do are really not an anomaly, but they've been really good at succeeding. But then some companies plateau at a certain level, some teams plateau at a certain level, some individuals plateau at a certain level. And that means you need to change your way of doing things. And there's a whole bunch of things that you need to look at to be able to get there. And that might mean surrounding yourself with different people, getting other perspectives, and overcoming that plateau that you've attained. And I've seen companies that have been at the same level for 10, 15 years, and they've been comfortable with that. But you know what? As soon as you change a few things, they could break through and get to a next level. Now, is the leader the right person to your point? At times, if he's comfortable in being there, so that might be a lifestyle decision, and that's all right. But if you're staying at the same level, you're probably your company is dying slowly, and you're not maximizing your value. So to your point, you might be a better off selling it, or if you really want to get through the next level and you're not able to do it, then it's really, and that's what I do with my processes, um, going in there and identifying what are the stumbling blocks or the inhibitors to get to the next level. And there's changes that need to probably get done in the organization.
I'm glad to hear that because I personally went from that phase. I remember I asked you some advice, and to accept that you're going to have different people in your organization often is kind of a personal dilemma often, because you build trust over time. But I call it moving from people who are excellent being Swiss knife
Uh-huh.
to highly specialized individual that are capable at operating with a structure in place, and the structure allow you to delegate a lot more. Have you seen in the business you worked with a lot of problem with the component of delegation?
Well, so delegation is hard for a lot of people. So definitely that's again in my workshops we talk about delegation, and it's hard for people to delegate because they feel that they have people will feel that it's easier for them to do stuff because they've always done it versus giving it to someone else. But really finding the right person that could do the job and do the job at 60% or better at the first time around. And if that person likes what they're doing, they'll do a much better job in time and do a much better job on that task than you would ever do in time. And that gives you time to really center yourself on your unique ability. So, it, if I ask you, Jeremiah, like there's probably a whole bunch of things that you do on a weekly basis. And there's a lot of things that, probably drag you down and you want to delegate those ideally or get rid of those ideally so that you could center yourself on the things that you like to do that bring value to your organization, and the more of that you're going to do, the better your business is going to be. And that's what delegating is about. But now if you're always doing all the things and even the things that you don't like but you feel that you need to do them because you'll do a better job, or it's going to take too much time to delegate it to someone else, you're not doing your job. And your job is to really, I see people, or at least leaders, the business leaders, the executive team, as the godfathers of the child that they've put in place, which is the company. The company, the leaders are there for the company. And if they serve the company well, the company will serve them well in return. And to serve the company well, you need to be able to, put the right people in the right places, focus on, the value that you could bring to the organization, and making sure that that organization is going to be successful. So if you have ego that gets in the way, that's probably not serving the organization in the proper way.
Yeah, I agree, and that's probably one of the hardest thing to overcome when within the executive team there's a lack of alignment. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. What would be a couple of trap you've seen that many entrepreneurs have along the way? Even if when they think, a lot of them must be enthusiastic about, okay, let's work with EOS as an example. It's not easy. And you probably saw a lot of mistakes happening along the way. What would be your advice to people who are in that position? Let's say they bought the two baseline EOS books, and Rocket Fuel, I think, and what's the other one?
Traction.
Yeah, Traction. So they read both books, they're super primed, and they go to their team and they're like, we're going to implement EOS.
Yeah, the question is good. Like when I meet companies, and there's a methodology, and I'm there to help the methodology put the methodology in place. But on the leadership team, or the founder or the owner's side, I think putting ego aside and having the maturity to want to be coached or listen to someone who probably has another perspective is a key driver of success. Perseverance, and most entrepreneurs will have perseverance, but is another key element of success. And then rigor is probably the third one, where wanting to make things better and continuously revisiting is probably a third element of success that I'd say will help a company be successful, putting in place EOS or any business operating system in place, and really following it through and putting it in place. And when you do it successfully, what I've seen is that the companies don't get strained as much. I was going to say don't work as hard as hard, but they do work as hard. But the work has less friction and has more traction. Let's use that title. So, but definitely, you start seeing results, and you start eliminating pain or frustration that you had.
Yeah, and that's very important. Like you said, brings that alignment and clarity that allows the company to grow faster.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to identify the skill set, I think we've covered, but what usually makes a company clearly a winner versus a company who's going to struggle and then potentially do okay or become a zombie company or will survive through an acquisition? What usually makes the difference?
Well, as far as leadership, the three things that I said, but you know what? Having the right leadership team with the right people in the right places. Having the team that believes in the destination, the long-term goal, having the team that will follow and put some rigor in their process, and we'll work well together. And what I mean by working well together is not agree to what everybody says, but could have healthy debates and constructive debates in the favor of the company, not putting ego aside and really thinking about the company first, saying what they think, but also then agreeing to the decisions that are made and supporting the team on those decisions. I think that's the key element following the leader in place.
I love that. I like that. You've been involved with companies in tech, company that sells products, services in many categories and shape and form. When it comes to, as we all know, it takes money to run a business. And we've seen a big shift from, pure valuation, where we try to get as much fun as possible, promising future profit, versus company nowadays who seems to have a lot more pressure at delivering, profitability, what the bottom line looks like. Over the years, have you seen a difference? Have you seen certain patterns that are not good for a business, or certain recipe that works well because, let's say, I don't know, there's a incubator with an accelerator behind it and people who are trustworthy, or the complete opposite? What's your opinion on this, and what entrepreneurs should be careful or go after?
So in that question, I'm assuming you're talking about more tech companies because
Probably, yeah. Yeah.
so so um so what's frustrated me over the years? I've been involved uh, in tech for a while, as you know, and I've been involved with different funds as well, and accelerators and incubators. Um, and I think things are changing, but you know what? Uh, Often I'd find, especially earlier on, that companies would define success by raising around, and basically raising around only meant that people bought into your idea and basically um, believed in you and the team that was put in place. But that's where things really started, and you needed to prove yourself and hopefully deliver uh, growth and a return on that investment. I've seen that way too often, and I don't know if that created less successful companies or not, but there's a lot of coaching that hopefully went against that and improved at that stage. I haven't been involved in incubators and accelerators in a while, but I think having the right focus on what is success, what is, again, thinking of the company and being a good godfather or godparent to the company, and thinking of it as how do we make it that company evolve and to deliver longer term success is key.
I love that. Thanks for that, Patrick. Um, you decided, because there's many systems, but you've decided EOS is worthy enough for you to really become an expert in. You invested a lot of time. I think you're even going as far as working on a book. Could you tell us a bit about why you think EOS is the right solution for many enterprise or companies? One thing I would ask you is what size of organization should look at EOS, and then maybe also touch upon the book you're working on.
Yeah. So let me start with that. EOS, the focus of EOS, like the design client or the best client, or is a company between 10 and 250 employees. So that's kind of it was designed for that. Yet, I have clients that have a lot more than 250 employees. There's not a lot, but there are some. And I have one client who has less than 10 employees. But you know what? The key focus and the design for the operational system is for 10 to 250 employees. Um, I did other, I did scaling up. I've done other business operating systems, and they're all good. But what I found with EOS was there was more structure, and there was more. I found it to be simpler, but simpler doesn't mean that it's easier. It's there was a lot more structure to it, and that's what I appreciated from EOS, and also that's what I see when I implement it with clients. That helps generate success. And to that, I started all these business operating systems because initially when I started maybe about 10 years ago out with Gray Substance, my focus was on how do I help. I had a really good experience with a board, and I said, you know what, bringing the right people with the right experience, um, and with putting a good structure on a board process could really help a business. I've seen a business really grow phenomenally and outside of technology, but huge success story. And that inspired me to go out and help businesses put in place a good advisory board or a good board with the right talents, the right talents that would fill a competency gap between where they wanted to go and where they were, and then a right framework to really help inform this board on where you were, but also where you were going and where the gaps were. And and when I started doing that with a lot of businesses, they were interested. I realized, you know what, they weren't ready. They weren't ready because
Mm.
they didn't have the right business plan. They weren't operationalizing their business plan. They didn't have a dashboard. So I said, you know what, I need to help them with their strategic planning, operationalizing that, and then my acceleration is really with advisory boards and boards. So I'm a fellow of the Advisory Board Center, which is an international association for advisors. And I'm kind of so with EOS. There's a notion in EOS, if you read the book, called the owner's box, and the owner's box is really what we're talking about now. So it's really how you get the owners to really take decisions on where they want to take the business, the dividends that they make, how they pay them out, and so on, or reinvest them. And I'm writing now. I'm starting to write the book called The Owner's Box, which is going to be the book that will tie into EOS and talk about advisory boards and governance structures.
I think it's so important because advisory boards, well implemented with the right people, um, bring just so much value. So thank you for that work. I think it's going to be a great book, and thanks for your involvement in the business community. I think now more than ever we need that, and it's not easy. Technology is great, information is accessible, but there's just so much of it that it can get daunting nowadays.
And things are moving fast, right? And they're like we started in technology. I started a long time ago, but uh, at times we thought things were moving fast, but now things are accelerating and niches are going even faster. So it's hard to follow, and that's where experience and people that have done it before could really help you refocus and probably accelerate your business in the right direction and avoid making mistakes.
Yeah. So, Patrick, I'm going to leave you on that note, but a little confession. When I started Polysleep, I remember, I think it was the first or second year. It was tough, and I remember calling you for a lunch.
Hmm.
And one sentence you told me is still a sentence I repeat to younger entrepreneur,
Hmm.
and that's really got stuck with me. And that sentence was, "Hear everyone out, but don't listen to anybody." And you were so right about that. I think getting as much information as possible is so valuable, but not to get influenced too fast is also something critical that we need to learn as an entrepreneur. So Patrick, thank you so much for joining me today. If people would like to have a little bit more information about what you're doing, where can they go?
Well, you could go to Gray Substance. That will bring you to my LinkedIn profile. That's probably the best way to start, and go from there.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Patrick. Thank you so much for being part of the Up at Night family. If you've liked what you heard today, don't forget to rate, follow, subscribe, or leave me a comment below. New episodes of Up at Night drop every 2 weeks. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a single episode. I'm Jeremiah Curvers. Until next time.